So welcome again, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. Every week we're going to feature true subject matter experts in the marketing field, and this week we're going to talk about the king, content marketing. We often hear that content is king, but the king has to have a strategic approach focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to attract and retain a clearly defined audience as defined by the Content Marketing Institute. Ultimately, it's got to drive profitable customer action. So when you think, who are some of the real thought leaders that can help you do that content from strategy to execution to optimization? Well, I am really excited to bring you this week's guest. He's been inducted into the Content Marketing World Hall of Fame, named one of the top 50 influencers to watch in 2016 by Entrepreneur, one of the top 10 online marketing experts to follow in 2015 by Forbes. He's the author of 2 content marketing books, Accelerate and Content Marketing Works. Arnie Kuenn is the CEO of Vertical Measures and truly a leading expert in his field. He's a well-known speaker at many different digital marketing conferences across the country. I've had the pleasure of hearing him speak as well. So let's dive into the deep blue sea with Mr. Shark and Arnie Kuenn on A Shark's Perspective. Thank you, everybody, for joining the show. And Arnie, it was a great pleasure to have you on here. Thank you for taking time to join us on A Shark's Perspective. Could you tell me a little bit about your background? I mean, I think for a lot of our listeners are probably going to be quite familiar with Arnie Kuenn. You've pretty much appeared at every type of digital marketing conference out there. I know I've seen you at 2. You're well known in the community, especially as an author and as a CEO of Vertical Measures. But could you tell us a little bit about your background into marketing?
Well, sure, and thanks for having me on, Kenneth. My background actually extends, I guess the phrase is a serial entrepreneur, so it extends back through 4 different companies that I've started, and 3 of them tended to have worked. If I look at the failure of the first one, it was probably that I didn't do marketing correctly. So since then, I've pretty much been a marketer. I've been in the technology space now for a little bit over 25 years, 3 different back-to-back businesses in various aspects of technology, last 20 years almost exclusively online, different internet plays. And my big focus is, I suppose, has been digital marketing.
So, at least from what I have known of you and have read, I would obviously encourage everybody to read Arnie's books. I read through Content Marketing Works, which I know is it a free download?
Yeah, you can get a free download. You can search for it at Content Marketing Works. Probably if you search Content Marketing Works at Vertical Measures, that's where you can get it for free.
Yeah, it's a really good read, and I mean it's always good to have an author who wrote a book. I will call it the book on content marketing. But can you explain a little bit about the strategy that what is creating? Obviously, content is king, but what is really creating the shift so much more to content marketing? Talk maybe a little bit about Google's algorithm and how that's affected some of the change in what people are looking for when searching for information as they do research to either buy a product, search a service, anything like that.
Sure. Yeah, you bet. Well, and as you know, I'm primarily, or at least in my early career at starting Vertical Measures, first 2, 3, 4 years, I was really just doing SEO work. And, with that comes content, but, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, it was pretty darn easy to get ranked highly on Google or Yahoo or any of the search engines that existed back then. And so it was more of a game. What really has transpired now in the last several years, I'll say probably starting in 2010, 2011, is that the algorithm has just gotten super intelligent. It really understands, I would say, the value of content and is way better at understanding semantic searches and searcher intent and so on. And it really became clear that content was the game for both SEO and and even paid, which I think we're going to talk a little bit about amplification, but content's at the core. And for many people, it seemed like, well, yeah, no doubt. But as long as the game could be played, back in those days, the game was played, and you weren't focused so much on good, high-quality, unique content for your website. Today, that is the only thing you can do, is really focus on the core content of your site, provide helpful, useful stuff that people are actually searching for in the United States, at least on Google, and that's the core to winning.
So let's go ahead and dive into content amplification, but let's also talk about the types of content that should be created. And I know a lot of companies, a lot of brands can get very siloed in their approach with content. But when you're talking about that holistic point of view, I think it's probably important for you to elaborate a little bit on what types of content people should actually be creating so that it will, symbiotically work together.
Right. No, actually, that's a great question, and it's actually probably my biggest well, first of all, my first real lesson as a content marketer was figuring that out. Our agency made several mistakes at the beginning. In fact, I wrote my original book on content marketing it was published in 2011, so 7 years ago. And the update, which is Content Marketing Works, is pretty much a result of all the mistakes we've experienced, that we knew the industry was experiencing. And a lot of it boiled down to, in my opinion anyway, clients not creating the correct content. And the correct content means that they were generally guessing at what their users wanted, or they thought they should be creating cool, clever content, and they hadn't even established a foothold yet. And so my mantra for the last several years is that you have to really do the research on what your audience is searching for, and then create that content that they were literally going in, again, to Google and typing into that search bar and looking for. And like the statistics we know is that over 90% of the time before we go to buy anything, whether it's B2B, B2C, it does not matter, we turn to a search engine, and again, in the United States, it's just dominated by Google, and we start to research that product or service. And sometimes it takes 30 minutes, and sometimes it's a 6-month journey. But you have to be the answer. You've got to provide that content so that they end up on your website, sifting through your pages, and ultimately doing business with you.
Yeah, and I'll add that 7 to 8 years ago, when your last book, that's like 100 digital marketing years.
Right, exactly.
So, considering algorithm changes, but do you often see that that you have clients and brands that are trying to create content, i.e., a narrative, and push that through, where you've got to walk them back and say, look, I know you want to talk about X that's related to your brand, but people are actually searching for Y. I think that's something we see a lot. I've seen in the past as well.
Yeah, it happens all the time. I think we're maybe finally we teach workshops all around the world. I've probably personally been in front of 10 to 15, maybe even 20,000 people in the last 6-7 years, and what I can see shifting is finally people are understanding that it isn't content marketing in its purest form is not all about your brand or your message. It's all about your customer and your client and your prospect and what it is they're looking for. And we've had to fight that pretty hard with clients. Just saying, this just isn't going to resonate because nobody's actually going to search for this. This is the message you want out there, but it doesn't line up with what people are actually searching for, looking for, even on social media. What is it they're actually looking for so that you can provide the best answer?
Yeah, and I that's so smart because you really think about it. That really can enhance a customer's customer experience, their customer journey. It's really the things that they're looking for, not just the narrative that a brand is trying to always push. And when you say that you've sat in front of these groups and done a lot of these workshops, one of the things I thought that was really neat about your book that I'll point out was some of the people that were calling out your praises for some of these workshops, like the chief strategy officer at the Content Marketing Institute, where I know you're a member of, I think, their Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm in the Hall of Fame.
Rand Fishkin, well-known Rand Fishkin, who's the
Yep.
founder of Moz. There are
Yep.
just a ton of big names out there that were I think the CMO at HubSpot, again, another fantastic product. But so let's talk a little bit then about content amplification. So you've got the right kind of content that you've pulled together. It's more than just the right keywords, but the true tribe content. So as a marketer, if I want to understand the basics of content amplification, what is that? What is that in your, as you would describe it?
Yeah, and it can get complicated real fast. So
Sure.
I'm glad you said the basics. But primarily, of course,
Well, this is a
means,
4-hour show, so.
Is it 4? Oh, I got 4 hours. Okay, good. I need more water.
Yeah, exactly. You and Rubio.
So basically, how we would do it, if we brought on a new client and they said, look, I think we have good content, we need to reach a bigger audience, and we would look at their content and we would try to figure out exactly what the target audience might be for specific pages, right? It's not always the same. And also complex companies might have a lot of different types of services and a lot of different types of products, so there's going to be different audiences even for the same company. But generally what we would start to do is to look at content that we know is already resonating with an audience. So what pages are people finding on your website most frequently through whatever source, whether it's social media or a search engine, and then look at and see if they're actually converting from those pages or clicking through your site, so that we know these pages are working. And we would generally start there and then amplify it through whatever the right channel might be. And so amplification generally means we're going to spend some money, generally, on social media sites or possibly Google or other search engines to draw people into that content one way or another. And I should say that the content could be as varied as a downloadable ebook all the way through to a single landing page, or the whole goal is to get them to buy something or convert to a lead. So the content can run the gamut.
Well, and there are a lot of people obviously that talk about content marketing now. It's a great strategy that we, all try to use as a best practice. But can you describe, without going into any particular client's detail, but some of the success stories that you have seen? I mean, I think one of the key things you see now is that so many CMOs are pouring a lot more money into things like content marketing and influencers, and that's again still some content driven, just driven through another channel. But what kind of success stories are you seeing that companies who adopt this method into their mix? What kind of results are you seeing in their KPIs?
Sure. Well, generally actually, I should say that everybody has a little bit different KPI, but I know a couple of statistics cold that our own agency has, which is, and actually one of the words you use is should not be overlooked, which is if they actually execute on these strategies, and that's the key. But we measure all of our clients, and so rather than cherry pick, a lot of times we'll present the full data for our whole client set. So we know that any client of ours who's doing both SEO and content with us, so for just set paid and amplification aside for a second, but they're just strictly following content marketing sort of principles with our organization, and we have about 30 of these clients. The average client after 2 years, actually I'll just start with 1 year. After 1 year sees about a 70% growth in their organic traffic, and after 2 years it's almost 200%, which means that our average client almost triples their traffic in 2 years. If they stick with us and if they leave us, we don't know anymore, but if they stick with the principles and are actually executing, and I'm emphasizing that because when we look at our roster of clients, the ones that aren't performing anywhere near this well, we know for a fact that the challenge is they're not publishing good content on a frequent basis for whatever the reason is, and usually it means there's some executive team, it could be the legal team, it could be branding, it could be the CEO who just isn't allowing this content to get published, and they keep falling behind, and the results aren't there. And then meanwhile, we're watching a whole other set of clients who are just religiously following these principles, optimizing the content, and it works. It works every single time if you actually implement it.
So that is a great point, talking about the things that hold up that type of content. But you talk about legal. Content marketing in general has a fairly low cost of entry, correct? But it's not a toe deep in the water type of approach. It's like you said, it needs to be, the discipline needs to carry out through time. But the hurdles that you've seen have typically what prevents somebody getting into this outside of legal, but adopting that discipline. What are the types of hurdles that you've seen?
Well, I'd say, outside of legal and branding, and even branding starting to come around, but, compliance and those kinds of issues. But the other issue is companies believing that they do not have the bandwidth to produce the content. Because like you said, it can be low cost from a dollar's perspective, but no matter what, it takes real effort to write or shoot video or, create images, graphics, whatever it might be, whatever form all of your content is going to come in. Somebody has to put in that effort to do that. And I should probably have mentioned, too, that the more successful clients, with us anyway, are the ones where we're in a partnership where they're being the subject matter experts. We're working together to come up with titles and bullets for the content and, generate these ideas. And then if we can get them to produce most of it, we're happy with being the editors and maybe the videographers and creating images and all that, but they've got to lay out their expertise in writing. And once we can get some momentum there and that ball starts rolling, things just start to fall in place. But the struggle a lot of times is it's natural for a company to say, well, where are we going to find time for this? Or we don't have anyone who could write about that or whatever. And I think generally, and I hate to say it, I just think it's an excuse. Everybody can make it a priority and find a time, and the ones that do, they're the ones that are just pulling away from everybody.
I'm certain that you have seen many times in your career where they don't provide, where the business doesn't provide what the business is wanting to do. They sometimes can rely too much on an agency without really giving you those business rules and guidelines to go with. And that can be, I'm not trying to defend an agency, but that can be too hard on an agency to produce things that they don't know what exactly the advertiser. I mean, you've got to have a goal. What is it? The goal is just a wish without a plan. So laying that kind of plan out as the advertiser is really important so that the agencies and publishers can react to it correctly.
Right.
So
and I think go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, keep going.
Well, and I think my observation anyway is that, because I've been around and you've seen all this too for the last 10, 15, 20 years, is that some of the C-level people, they're used to the old world of they would sit down with an ad agency, create an ad, see a bunch of ads, put in front of them. They would approve the ad, and then they would approve the budget to go out and run these ads on TV, radio, print, whatever the traditional media was. And that was the end of the work that was involved. All they had to then do is, pay the bill every month. And what's different with digital, all digital, and about half of advertising money today is being spent on digital, is that it actually does take effort. It's a different medium, and the company has got to be more involved than they used to have to be. So some of the old school views are still forcing their ways into digital, and those are the ones that are not succeeding.
Well, if you think the way the show Mad Men was set up, that's a perfect example. In the past, it would have been delivering that ad. Now you're delivering the ad. They're going to your Facebook page or your Instagram page, and they're responding. Maybe they put some negative comments. Now you got to be involved. At the same time, you've just got to deliver content
Right.
after content after content. It's not a one-off anymore like it would be with those kind of pieces in the past. So talk a little bit about how you use content marketing for lead nurturing.
Well, so actually, what you just said is kind of a lead into that. Ha
Yeah.
ha ha. So you're running those ads, you're doing whatever you're doing to promote content, you're using social media, but ultimately the goal is to bring them to your website most of the time, and we'll just assume that for this conversation. So once they hit your site, and what I think Vertical Measures has become really good at over the last couple of years is, in fact, we're changing our whole. When someone asks us what Vertical Measures is today, yes, we're a digital marketing agency. We specialize in content, SEO, and paid media, but we believe our goal for a client is to help them grow their own audience. So just, not that I'm bashing on traditional media, but even Google AdWords, that you're renting their audience, right? You just keep putting ads in front of them and so on and so forth. Our belief is if you're going to spend that kind of money and you're going to pull people into your website, you need to capture as much information as you can from them that's appropriate, for whatever it is they're getting from you, and then turn that into your own audience, an audience you own, which is basically a database of these contacts, so that you can constantly nurture them until they become a client. So there's all sorts of content that can work for that. We've all taken those quizzes through Facebook or other means, or actual real serious tests to see if this might fit for us, and that's one method. Earlier I mentioned, downloading ebooks or white papers or research papers. There might be a video training series that you sign up for, but all of it is designed to give you a value in exchange for you giving, you, the customer or the prospect, giving your name and your email and maybe the name of your company and your URL or whatever else it is you want to ask for. And from that point on, I see many, many companies dropping the ball, but that's where the lead nurture starts. Now that you've raised your hand and said, okay, I'm actually interested in the services you offer, the products you offer. I just downloaded your really cool white paper on this. Most companies stop there. They might send a thank you email, but our research shows that you need to follow up with them at least 7 times.
Wow.
That the conversions keep happening up until about the 7th or 8th contact, and they then start dropping off. So you're leaving business on the table if all you do is send a thank you email.
So talk. So that metric goes spot on into basically the next chapter of your book and my next question. Let's talk about the measurement. How at least from a content marketing standpoint, I mean, it's all going to boil down eventually to sales for
Right,
any business. Right. The agency will look at it maybe something a little bit different. The publisher may look at something a little bit different, like impressions. But what are sort of a fair way to measure content deliverables? If I'm somebody stepping into this, I've got to obviously, borrow another phrase, inspect what I expect, but what should my expectation levels be so that I can monitor the progress of a campaign like this?
Yeah. Well, it depends on also how deep we're talking about agency and client relationships, how deep, how trusting each of them are. So if the client really trusts the agency, then they might allow them access to data which includes revenue data. That doesn't always happen, but in almost every case, if we set up analytics correctly, connect Search Console, connect all the tools together, we can at least, at the very basic, of course, understand traffic. But I would say that you should be asking your agency and setting the goals together, but how many, what we call MQL, so how many marketing qualified leads, and that could be that simple white paper download or research piece or whatever it is, that might be a marketing qualified lead. Okay, we have somebody who we know is at least interested in our industry, and that a sales qualified lead would be the next level, which says, they're actually interested in us, us and maybe 2 competitors. We now have some qualified prospect here, and then of course if you can get it tracked all the way to the point where you say, and they just became a customer at this value, then you can backtrack all of this all the way through analytics and figure out what your cost of conversions are, your cost of sales are, and truly understand where to put your marketing money and where it's paying off.
So if I'm going to ask anybody about this, I cannot think of a better person to ask than you. But if you had to kind of, just for shiggles, look at your crystal ball, where is content marketing going to evolve?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good one. I think people are gonna. I'm already seeing in our workshops, people they're getting it. And I think over the next year or two, they'll really understand that it isn't about them, the brand. It's more about the customer,
Yeah.
what it is they're looking for, and how they're going to reach them. I think AI is going to play a bigger and bigger role. I know now that like our paid team is to me an amazing team, that they understand things I've never even had my hands on.
Sure.
I know you can just throw out the word programmatic, and that that sounds cool, and that is cool, and it does neat things. But what we're able to learn and how to find very tailored custom audiences, so that it's not wasting advertising spend. I just think it's getting, what I've seen in just 2 years has taken giant leaps forward. So I would imagine over the next 2, 3, 4 years, if that's the kind of horizon we're talking about, we're only going to get better and better and better at being able to target customers with the right content at the right time with the right right advertising dollar amount.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Well, Arnie, again, kind of close us out. Tell people where they can find you, where they can find information about your company and content marketing.
Sure, you bet. Well, I'm Arnie Kuenn, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company in Phoenix, Arizona called Vertical Measures. Probably the best way to reach us and learn about us is on our website. It's verticalmeasures.com. That's probably the best way to go. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Arnie K, ARNIEK. I tweet almost every day. That's probably the two best approaches.
Well, third best, I'm going to see you at a digital marketing conference this year, probably.
I'm sure you will.
So,
yes.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me.
So there was my conversation with Arnie Kuenn regarding content marketing. SEO practitioners should be happy. Let's think about 3 things we can take away from that conversation from a high level. First, if you paid money to get someone interested in your product, then turn them into your audience. Give them something back of value and constantly nurture them. Follow up at least 7 times. Second, there are all kinds of content that you can use for content marketing. Ebooks, white papers, blogs, videos, podcasts. And third, content marketing is a discipline. It's not about them, the brand, but what people are actually searching for when researching a company or offering. If you're interested in a really good read, I encourage you to go to verticalmeasures.com, find out about Arnie Kuenn and the Vertical Measures team. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our conversation regarding another one of the many components that make up marketing today. And join us where the shark is king on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.